One of the great things about when you look at history is they always taught in parables. And what's a parable? A parable is just a simple little story that has with it a moral lesson or a spiritual lesson or some lesson that goes along with it. For example, we have the story of King Midas, who was so greedy he wanted everything he touched turned to gold. And he got his wish. And everything that he touched did turn to gold, including all of his food and his bed, so nothing was comfortable anymore. And kind of teaches us to be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. We've got the parable of the tiger who wanted to be king. I'm not sure if that's the exact title. I couldn't find it. I just remember this from my youth. This tiger wanted to be king of the beasts instead of the lion. And the only way he could get it was by brute force. And he took on every animal in the forest, or every animal in the jungle, one animal at a time, and chased them off if they challenged him. But before long, there was no animals left in the forest, and he was king. But he was king over nothing. And he found out a king that has no subjects is not really a king. And one of them I heard, just a few years ago, is the parable of the scorpion and the frog. You may not have heard this one. And it's just simply that the scorpion wanted to cross over from one side of the pond to the other, but didn't want to walk. And he went up to the frog and said, "Would you please give me a ride over to the other side of the pond?" The frog said, "No, you're a scorpion, you'll sting me." He says, "No, you don't understand. I want to get over there, so I promise you I will not sting you." And after some convincing, the frog finally gave in and said, "Okay," and the scorpion jumped on his back and got across to the other side, and just as they got over to the other side, the scorpion stung him. He says, "I thought you said you weren't going to sting me." He goes, "I'm a scorpion, that's what we do." And that teaches us that we can't put our trust in the world. The world is run by Satan. And if we think that all of a sudden the world is going to be good to us because we asked him to be good, we're not thinking it through. We're being too gullible. We have to be alert on those things. Those are parables. Different ways of teaching using a story to get a point across. Jesus used this technique extensively. He had parables like the pearl of great price, talking about heaven. The 10 virgins at the wedding, telling us that we need to be prepared. The prodigal son, really teaching the Pharisees that don't be so judgmental, because even the ones who leave can come back when they learn. But the one I want to focus on this morning is this parable of the talents. You can find this in Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. Rather than reading it, I'm just going to give you an overview of it. But do take the time to read it. It's a great parable. This parable has 4 characters in it. The first one is the master. And he's getting ready to go on a trip. Well, this master in our story represents God. And he calls his 3 servants before him. They represent us. And to one of the servants, he gave 5 talents, or 5 coins. To the next one, he gave 2, and the last one, he gave 1. He gave them all talents based on their ability. And he went on his trip. Well, the man with 5 talents went out and used his skills and abilities in negotiating, and he was able to turn those 5 talents, those 5 coins, into 10 coins. The man with 2 talents, same thing with his skills and abilities. He was able to multiply his by 2 as well and get 4 coins back instead of 2. The one talent man is interesting. The one talent man talks about how much he fears the master. And that fear paralyzed him. And he said, "I don't want to lose this money, because if I lose this money, the master is not going to be happy." And it doesn't talk about this, but I suspect because of what I've seen through years of watching people, he also may have had the thought, well, if I only have 1 talent, Master probably doesn't expect a whole lot out of me. So I'm just going to take this one talent and I'm going to go someplace secret and I'm going to dig a ditch and I'm going to hide it. I'll bury it. That way I can't lose it and nobody can steal it from me. So when he gets back, I can give it back to him. Well, the master came back. And the man with 5 talents said, look, master, you gave me 5, here's 10 back. He says, you good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over much, I'm going to give you much. And the man with 2 talents says, I brought you 4 back. He says, you good and faithful servant. But the man with 1 talent says, look, here's your talent back. And the master looked at him and says, you realize who I am? You know I want to make money. You know I increase where I don't work, and it's your job to go out there and increase my funds, and you gave my 1 talent back to me? He says, well, I was afraid. He took the talent from him, he gave it to one of the other men and said, get out. Interesting story. What I want to do this morning is take a look and see what it actually means. One of the first lessons that we can learn from the parable of the talents is that we all have skills and abilities. We have talents. I really find it ironic, and it's just a happenstance of language. Talent back then referred to a coin. Today, we refer to it as our abilities and skills. So it kind of translates, doesn't it? But we all have talents and skills, and to different degrees. Just like one has 5 talents, one has 2 talents, one has 1 talent. We all have different talents based off of our abilities. In the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 14 through 22, we find that we each have different roles for our abilities. It says, for the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. And if the ear says, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the sense of hearing? If the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them, as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you. Nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the parts of the body that seem to be the weaker are indispensable. I found this out when I was managing salespeople. Every salesperson had different talents and abilities. And I could play off of their strengths. But one of the things they always taught us, never ever try to make them all like you. The last thing you want is a team of you. Now for me, that was easy to understand. I didn't want a bunch of me. But I have met managers out there and worked for managers out there who that's exactly what they wanted. They didn't understand the concept of diversity. Let me see if I can explain it to you this way. Well, use a little bit of this analogy. As you noticed, down here on the Lord's table, I put down a piece of paper when I came up here. Let's say I wanted to pick up that paper. And I have eyes to see that paper. And I have hands to pick up that paper. But I have no feet. I may fall off of here anyway. How am I going to get that paper? Can I look at the feet and go, I don't need the feet. They're so funny looking. They get ingrown. I break a bunch of the toes constantly. Why do I even need these things? Well, I can't get to that paper to pick it up if I don't have feet. Well, let's say I do have feet. What I don't have are hands. I can walk up to that paper. I can see that paper. Guess what? I can't pick up that paper. I got no hands. I can't say to the hands, oh, hands, you're weird looking. You got a bunch of appendages sticking out all over the place. They're just weird, and I drop things constantly. I have no need of you. No. We need every part. Again, I know that paper's there because Jason told me that paper's there. I can walk to it. I can pick it up when I get there. But I have no eyes. I have no idea where that's at. I can wander all over this building trying to find that paper. I can't look at the eyes and go, look, you get cataracts, you're a funny color, you get crossed sometimes. I have no need of you. No, we need every part. And one part is not more important than another. You see, sometimes we look at that and say, oh, I'm just that one talent person. I really don't have the skills to do anything. And since I don't have any skills, I'm sure God doesn't expect a whole lot out of me. You know what's real helpful? Picking up a piece of paper like that that's on a flat surface. Fingernails. Something as little as insignificant as a fingernail makes the job so much easier. There is no part that is insignificant enough that it's not needed. And that's the same here in the church. You see, God gave us all talents before we were ever born. That's the amazing thing. Before I came out to this world and went, Mom, here I am, God says, I'm giving you these skills. I'm giving you these abilities. I'm taking the normal wires that give people a sense of shame, and I'm going to cross those on yours so that you can get up in front of people and talk and not be embarrassed. I'm sure he knew what else that was going to cause, and I've created a lot of laughter for him and the angels up there. I'm sure I've entertained them a lot of times with some of the things that I've done in my life. Maybe one of these days we can go over that. Because I'm kind of proud of it. God made me that way. I have no problem with the things that I mess up. God created me like this. And he made me like this for a purpose. I am perfect in God's eyes for his purpose. As goofy as I am. He did that before I was born. He did the same to you before you were born. The problem is, oftentimes we never explore our talents and abilities to see what they actually are. And we may assume that we don't have them until we work at developing them. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. For we are all his workmanship, created in Jesus Christ for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. See, God gave us these talents for a reason, for a purpose. And in his wisdom, he didn't give us all the same talent. Because what good is singing if there's no teaching? What good is teaching if no one can prepare a Lord's Supper? What good is church if there's no fellowship and there's no love? See, we have a diversity of gifts for a reason. In the book of Romans, chapter 12, and verses 6 through 8, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them. Look at the diversity of gifts he talks about here. If prophecy, in proportion to our faith. If service, in our serving. What does that mean, in our service? In helping others. In doing things for others. We are to do that in our serving. For the one who teaches, in his teaching. For the one who exhorts, in his exhortation. The one who contributes in generosity. The one who leads with zeal. The one who does acts of mercy with cheerfulness. You ever seen a leader who is a reluctant leader? All right, guys. I guess we're supposed to go do this over here. You guys want to go? Not much of a leader. But if that leader goes, here's a job for us over here, folks, and we together, combined, can get this done quickly. Let's all get it done. Yeah. Everybody wants to follow somebody like that. Acts of mercy with cheerfulness. Well, I know you're sick and you can't get out of bed because of your leg problem, so I made a casserole here. Wow, thanks. What if you're down? You got a bad leg. Hey, I heard you got a bad leg or a bad back or whatever. Hey, I made you a great meal. You're really going to love this. Let me set it up for you here. Let me serve you. Enjoy that. I'm looking forward to the meal. We have those talents. We have to use them for God. And this is a great segue into the next point, that we are to use these gifts to help others. Yes, that's right. Just because we have the gifts doesn't mean we can sit on them. We have to actually use them. In the book of James, chapter 1, verses 22 through 25. But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what it was he was like. But the one who looks at the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, will be blessed in his doing. To really bring this home, you can sit and listen to me today and go, wow, great sermon, Mike. But then if you go home and not worry about how do I serve others? What abilities did God give me that I can use to help other people? Then it's like a man who walks or goes to a mirror, looks at himself and goes, oh, my hair's messed up. And walks away and then does nothing. And forgets that his hair's messed up. God gave us talents for a reason, so that we could use them, and that we could use them in his service. And it's important that we do those things needed to use them, to put ourselves in position to use them, to explore them, to find out what they even are. I know people who said, oh, I could never sing. That's because they never learned how. Once they learned how, they had beautiful voices. I was one who thought I could never lead singing. I was too afraid. But fortunately, God put some things in my way. He says, well, hey, there's a class on how to learn how to lead singing. Go there. And I sat in one, Clay Fladd's class on singing. He had a degree in music. I learned so much in that class. And I was mentally prepared to sing as far as the nuts and bolts. I knew that this was 2-beat time. I knew this was 3-beat time. I knew this was 4-beat time. And I knew when to do it. And I knew how to use a pitch pipe. And I knew how to get the right key. But I still sat there and never led the singing. I never did it because fear held me back. Until one day, the song leader came by and said, get 2 songs ready. I said, what? I can't do 2 songs. He said, okay, I'll take 1. And he walked away. Immediately, I began to sweat. What am I going to do? I got to lead a song. Well, I know how to do it. Intellectually, I've been through the classes. I know how to do this. Okay, let me see if I can find a song that will work. And I opened up the book and flipped about 3 pages, and there it was. Be with me, Lord. Perfect. And I got up there, and I looked at it, and I hit the pitch. And I began the song, and I sang, Be with me, Lord. And the whole congregation sang out loud, And when we got done, this thought, the very first thought that popped into my head, I didn't die. I'm still here. From that day on, I had no problem leading singing from then on. I became the assistant. Well, let's just we say that I was kind of the backup to the song leader. So when he wasn't there, I would lead singing. And eventually became the lead song leader and led song. Oh, wow, let's try English. See what I mean? He crosses these wires just to have fun with me, I think. That's what it is. I'm sure right now he's getting a good laugh out of it. I was the lead song leader for several years to where I led songs every single day, or every single Sunday, morning and night, and on Wednesday nights, except once a week when we would have song leading for the young people so that they could learn how to lead sing. From someone who was terrified and did not want to lead singing. But if we explore what God gave us, we'll be amazed to find out how many talents he actually did give us and what we can do for God. And it doesn't matter whether you can be a preacher up in the front pulpit or a song leader or a teacher in front of a class or just a person who is good at getting cards out to those who are sick. Every little thing is indispensable. Being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. When we use the skills God gave us, we glorify him. In the book of 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10 and verse 11, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another. A good steward of God's varied grace. Whoever speaks as one who speaks oracles of God, whoever serves as one who serves with the strength of God supplies, in order that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. To him belong glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. We are to use the gifts, not to let them sit idle on the shelf. Timothy had the gift of teaching, and he was encouraged not only to use it, but then to increase in his ability. See, in the parable we read that the person who had 5 got 10, and the master gave him even more. That's the way it works with God. When we use the talents that God gave us, and we've got them maxed out to their ability, he's going to give us more, seeing that we are using them. And we'll begin to find out that we can do other things as well. In the book of 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 14 through 16, do not neglect the gift you have, which was given to you by prophecy when the council of elders laid their hands on you. Practice these things. Immerse yourself in them so that all may see you progress. Keep a close watch on yourself and on the teaching. Persist in this, for by so doing, you will save both yourself and your hearers. Timothy was told, practice it. Get better at it. The more you practice it, the more you do it, the better you will get. That's another reason why we need to use these gifts that God gave us, because we will develop them and get even better at them. But what stops us? Same thing that stopped me from trying to lead singing. Fear. Fear is a terrible thing. You begin to think about all the bad things that can happen. None of the good. You begin to shake. You begin to get sweats. You begin to focus on nothing but the negative constantly. That's all you think about. If that's happening to you, it's called fear. And fear does not come from God. In the book of 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Well, if God did not give us a spirit of fear, where did we get it? Well, there's only one other source of it. Fear comes from Satan. It's a tool the devil uses to keep us from doing the will of God. Well, I don't want to go forward and be baptized and stand in front of everybody. That's scary. That's Satan using fear to say, don't obey God. Oh, I don't want to sing out. Other people might hear me. That's fear. That's Satan saying, don't sing and obey God, because that would be pleasing to him. Excuse me. You see, Satan is looking for every way possible to trip us up and to keep us from going to heaven. And one of his biggest tools is that of fear. Because if he can get us afraid to teach people because they might reject it, they might tell us no, they might even ridicule us, they might ostracize us. See how fear works? It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Well, what was Paul up against? Paul was up against being not only ridiculed, not only ostracized, but thrown into jail, beaten, stoned, and left for dead. But Paul persisted, and he was blessed for his persistence. We don't face near those challenges here in the United States today, but we still let fear stop us. It's important that we overcome this fear. See, God loves us, and he's always going to be there for us. In Matthew chapter 10, verses 28 through 31, it says, "And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both the soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows." God knows us so well. He knows us down to the number of hairs on our head. All right, you can tell your own joke from here. I'll just wait. But these sparrows, there's not one sparrow that dies that God doesn't know when it dies. Doesn't he care more for us than the sparrows? When we have tough times, when we face fear, he is there to help us if we'll let him. That's our problem. Sometimes we don't want to let him. I can handle this. I know I'm afraid. I'll overcome this myself. We talked about a couple of weeks ago. We need to pray when we face those challenges. Turn them over to God. Let him deal with them. Don't deal with it ourselves. You see, if we let God's love into our heart, his love is what overcomes the fear. In the book of 1 John chapter 4, verses 15 through 18, "Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him, and he is God. So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love. And whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. By this is love perfected with us, so that we may have confidence for the day of judgment. Because as he is, so also are we in the world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love." We have to let the love of God into our hearts. Understand how much he loves us. Understand how much he did for us. Understand how much he sacrificed for us. And when we understand how much God loves us, and we let that into our hearts, there's no room left for fear. It says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. If we find that we have fear, it says that we have not been perfected in love. We haven't let that love of God deep into our hearts so that we understand what he's done for us and what he means to us. Parable of the talents. First two servants used their skills and abilities to glorify their master, and they were praised for it. The third went and hid his talent in fear, and he was condemned for that. You see, we are to be like the servants with the 5 and 2 talents, and not like that 1 talent servant. God has given all of us different abilities. He's given them to us before we were even born. They're there waiting for us to access them. They're waiting for us to discover them and then to use them and develop them and become better servants of his. And when we do that, we glorify God. We are to use these gifts to help others. God gave them to us before we were born. We are to be active in God's service, not inactive. And in doing so, our abilities will increase. And we do this by using those skills, talents, and abilities that God gave us to help others. Help them learn about God. Help them learn about Jesus Christ. Help them learn about the love that they have for us. And then to help each other in our daily lives, both spiritually and physically, as needed. And we are to do this with no fear. Fear doesn't come from God. Fear comes from Satan. But God will always be there for us when we face Satan. So we never have to face him alone. And it's his love, if we let it into our hearts, that will chase fear away. The parable of the talents. The kids will always tell you when it's time to quit. When it's time to quit. Thank you so much for listening to me. Let the Word of God dwell in your heart richly. Think about what you've heard today. Study it. And if you agree that what I'm bringing to you is the true gospel of Christ, let us all look into our hearts, let God in, and find those talents that he gave us, and then use it for his glory.